If you've never cried while on public transport before and you want to give it a shot, then I suggest this book. Hello my friends, my name is AJ and welcome back to my book nook. Today we are going to be talking about Defy the Night by Bridget Kemmerer. I first saw this book on Instagram and I was really captivated by both the concept of it. I love those sort of fantasy Robin Hood stories, as well as the cover, which is probably one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen. I'd never actually heard of the author before, and I'd never actually read any of her works, so I'm very excited to pick up some of her other works after having read this, and I hope that I can inspire you to pick this up as well if you haven't given it a shot yet. As always, this review will be spoiler-free, but there will be a section filled with spoilers just because I want to be able to rant about it, but I will give you a warning before we get there. Let's talk a little bit about what Defy the Night is about. So Defy the Night takes place in the kingdom of Kandala, where a terrible fever which has caused the death of many of its citizens has been plaguing the kingdom. However, this fever can only be cured by one thing: the petals of a moonflower, which is only grown in two sectors run by some of the more harsher royal consuls. Tessa Cade and her best friend Wes Lark work to steal some of these petals from the hoarding royal sector and pass them out to people in the poorer wilds of the kingdom to keep them alive. Meanwhile, in the royal sector, Prince Coric, who is also the king's justice, must find a way to balance what the consuls want, especially those who are in charge of the moonflower production, with what is best for the kingdom. As the cure spreads thinner and people become more desperate, and the punishments for those stealing and smuggling moonflowers become more and more intense, Tessa finds herself wrapped up into a revolution trying to take down the king and his justice. Tessa finds herself discovering the truth about the politics of her kingdom, as well as Prince Coric trying to figure out if the way things have been working are really the best way to prevent a revolution from happening. So first thing I need to specify is that obviously, having heard the summary for this book, your immediate assumption is going to be, oh, it's a pandemic novel. And I gotta tell you, it's really not. The sickness that is plaguing Kandala is definitely nothing like what's going on nowadays, and it's not even the focus of the novel. It's something that's there, but it's never really something that is a big deal of it. It's more so based on the politics, which is something I do need to touch on, is that if you're looking for something that's a lot more action-packed, this isn't going to be the book for you. It's a lot more based on the politics of Kandala and the sort of balance between these greedy consuls who own the land where the moonflower grows and the kingdom who really needs that to keep the people safe. And although it is more so politics based, it is still very interesting, so I hope that doesn't draw you away from it. I also just need to say I absolutely love a good Robin Hood story. I always have, and this book does a really interesting job of twisting that sort of corrupt monarchy on its head. Like the idea of these corrupt rich royals, and we get to now look at why they're making the choices that they are. It switches between the perspective of Tessa and Coric, and it's such an interesting thing to do because it means that we get to see behind the scenes of what the monarchy's choices are. We get to see why they're making those choices and how delicate the balance of what is desired from the royal consuls versus what is needed for the kingdom is. And it's such an interesting way to do that. It also helps to give you a lot of sympathy for Prince Coric and King Harristan. You get to see sort of the traumatic childhood of being there as their parents are assassinated and having to take on the role of king and king's justice from a young age, and how hard that's been and how they can only really trust each other. And it's something that is such an interesting thing to look at. Honestly, the relationships in this book are so well written. First, let's take a look at Tessa and Wes. Wes is Tessa's love interest, but also her best friend, and they have such a cute romance. They've got this very sarcastic banter back and forth between them, and even though they're very secretive at the beginning, you kind of get to see them warm up to each other, and it's just such a great romance. There's some genuinely heart-wrenching moments, and there are multiple times that I was almost in tears. on the city bus. So that was nice. Having said that, I feel like Tessa is just not as interesting a character as I would have liked her to be. She's kind of flat. She doesn't have a lot of depth and dimension to her, and especially when you're comparing her perspective to Prince Coric's perspective, which has so much depth and complexion and character development, Tessa's parts just sort of pale in comparison. Now, I definitely still like Tessa. I enjoy reading her, but I just feel like there could have been more to her. We could have seen a little bit more growth, and it was just a little bit harder to invest in it when we were switching between her and Coric, when Coric's parts were just so much more interesting. Speaking of Coric, let's talk about Coric and Haristan's relationship, the brothers who only can trust each other because they don't trust anyone else in the castle. It is such a beautiful brotherly relationship. I love seeing them together. You get to see how caring they are for each other, even though they have to put on this disguise of being so tough and cruel to the outside world. And I love seeing that they do still care for each other and they are still worried about each other, and both of them wants to take care of the other, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful relationship, and I think it's done so well, and it really, really helps in that turning the monarchy on its head idea of maybe the people that Robin Hood is stealing from is not so cut and dry evil. Maybe there is some depth to them, and I think that was a really excellent decision. You definitely don't sympathize with a lot of the choices that they make, but you understand a little bit better why they're making it, and you actually do get to see both of them trying to become better people and better rulers, and that's definitely something that I think really ties the novel together. And as I mentioned, Coric really is the star of this novel. Getting to see him grow and change through this novel and realize that maybe the choices he's making may not be the best ones, and there may be a better way to do it without being pushed around, is excellent. I love watching Coric's side of the story. It's really interesting to see that behind the curtains of the monarchy, and it's really, really interesting to see that conflict between this scared boy who is still stuck at the assassination of his parents versus this man who is now trying his best to hold a kingdom together. And it's just such an amazing, amazing character. All right, that is it for my non-spoiler review. Next up, I am going to be talking about a few spoiler-filled moments that I basically just want to rant about. If you haven't read the book, I highly suggest that you skip this part because there's going to be some massive spoilers in this. However, if you have read the book and you want to come with me on this journey of me ranting about the most impactful moments to me, then stick around. I've left some timestamps down below so you can skip to my final thoughts if you want to skip through the spoilers. If you are here, then you are here to see the spoilers, which means that I am no longer responsible for anything you hear beyond this point. So first of all, the reveal of Wes being Coric. Oh my gosh. Now, when I said that I almost cried on public transport, this is what I was talking about. This scene is so crazy because first, you're really, really hoping for Wes and Tessa to get together, and they're very cute and they both like each other, and you know, you love Wes and you love Tessa, and then they finally kiss, and then you think that Wes is dead. First of all, how dare you? And then you find out that he's not dead at all, but that he's the prince, and oh my gosh, I have no words. It honestly adds so much to this book, especially as you continue on and you get to hear about Wes being a character that he's played for a very long time, ever since he was a kid and his brother would sneak out with him. And it's something where you look back and you realize, oh, they actually have been hinting at that before. I hadn't really put much thought into the idea that him and his brother would sneak out into the village. And then I kind of realized, oh yeah, they probably would have gotten to know people. He probably would have gotten attached. But we've only ever seen Coric in front of his brother who doesn't know, or in front of the consuls who require him to be this terrible, cruel persona. And it's just a very interesting balance. It adds a lot of complexity to the book, and I think it really, really ties it together. It's also great because it allows Tessa to be in the castle and understand more about the complexity of what the kingdom is like. And that's one of the other parts that I love about this book, is that Coric learns more from Tessa of, okay, I can't keep playing both sides here, I have to choose. Tessa learns more about how difficult it is for him to balance that. And I think that that's great because we're not requiring one of them to change for the other. We're requiring both of them to grow as people and realize that it's more complex than either of them had realized. And it honestly reminded me a lot of the second Shadow and Bone book, Siege and Storm. That book mostly takes place in the castle as they're planning and preparing for the Darkling's attack. And this book reminded me a lot of it because after she finds out that he is Prince Korik and she ends up staying in the castle, a lot of it is them planning out and trying to figure out how they can make Moonflower more effective. And it reminded me a lot of that in that sort of episodic sense, and it was just really good. I really liked the pacing of this book. Another very heartbreaking scene is when Tessa and Korik get taken by the rebels and Korik gets beat up and tortured by them. And that scene, oh my gosh. That scene is really the climax of their relationship, and it leads to this really, really beautiful moment where we see this incredible vulnerability in Korik that we don't see in the rest of the book, where we see that he's not just willing to sacrifice himself for the good of his brother, but also for Tessa and for the good of the kingdom. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful moment of his vulnerability. Obviously not beautiful when they're beating him up, but it's just so heart-wrenching and so heartbreaking, but also just this really great romantic moment with them, and it's another moment that just really stands out to me. And last but not least, let's talk a little bit about the ending. Harristan negotiating with the rebels. That scene is so important because it really shows how much Harristan is willing to negotiate and become a better king, because it is difficult, and it shows that he's willing to do whatever is necessary, and he is willing to talk to them without punishing them. He is willing to listen to Tessa, who knows what it's like out of the royal sector. And being able to see that and being how he trusts her because of how much he trusts Korik. It's this great moment. And it leaves the book very open-ended, but I actually like that. I like that the book ends with them realizing we've solved this problem, but we don't know if we're going to be able to solve the others. So I like that it's open-ended. I don't know if the author is planning on writing more books in the series. I feel like she probably is. But personally, I like where it ended. And I think that it's the perfect ending for a Robin Hood story where you take the corrupt monarchy and show that it's so much more than that. And that sometimes it's just a misguided young boy who was put on the throne far too fast. Alright, welcome back all my non-spoiler people. So what are my final thoughts? Overall, I think that the Defy the Night is an incredible twist on the classic Robin Hood story. The fact that it not only introduces these rob the rich and help the poor characters that you actually really grow to love, but also takes that side of the corrupt monarchy and completely destroys that preconceived notion of what that means to give you some sympathy and understanding for them while still making it clear that their actions are not acceptable is just absolutely incredible. It takes a look more on the political side than the action side of that, which is something that I haven't really seen done, and I really, really enjoyed that twist. At its core, it still has a small rebellion against a terribly ruled country that you really are hoping to root for because you do want things to be better for them, but at the same time, it makes you question why both sides are fighting. Honestly, if you haven't heard of Defy the Night and this is the first you're hearing of it, I hope that this convinces you to give it a shot. Or if you've seen this book on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and you're on the fence, then I hope that this helps to push you to go and give it a try. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up to let me know. And I would love to have a conversation with all of you down in the comments below. Have you read Defy the Night and did you like it as well? Or did this video make you want to give it a shot? Let me know. I'd love to have a conversation with all of you, but that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see all of you lovely people in the next video. Bye!